Hello again there, YouTube. I'd had it in my mind for a while that I might make another video in my little UFO series in which I talked about like what these things might be, how it's affected me, move on, various things, and I allow myself to speculate some. My previous videos, I've just talked about, what happened, kind of like that old TV show where they say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. What was it, Dragnet? I've just talked about, what I experienced, and I wanted to make a video, as I said, in which I speculated, talked about my, how this made me feel and how it's affected me. And anyway, I've not gotten around to doing that. I've not been feeling real good. I think I mentioned in my last video I got diagnosed with COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or disorder. It's a lung problem, and my oxygen levels are real low. I think I've had it for a while. Probably caused the heart attack I had 3 years ago, so I think they didn't diagnose what was wrong. But anyway, so I was going to make a video as I described, and then a couple of things have happened recently that I found very interesting. And I'm kind of rushing this video, but I wanted to make a video regarding these two things in particular. The first is I found a video. I've watched about 1,000 YouTube videos about, UFO sightings and abductions, and I recently watched a video, actually two, which featured a gal named Missi who lives in New Hampshire, and her husband saw an aircraft, a UFO, that they described identically to, it was identical in its description to the one that I saw, and I've never heard anyone describe exactly the same thing. They were standing on their deck at 4 in the morning of their house and saw two headlights. They called them headlights, as I did. They described them as looking kind of like halogen lights and, shimmering like I described. And in fact, then in their case is different in some ways. They were standing there watching this, and one moment, and then in the next moment, they were standing there with their heads back, looking up, and these headlights had been attached apparently to a triangular craft which was in an instant above their heads, and had a red light on the bottom. The gal said that it had a grate. I described the thing I saw as having ribs or striations. It very possibly could have been a grate. They estimated that it was 160 to 200 feet on each side. I said 150 to 200 feet. I mean, it was the same object. Everything was virtually identical to what I saw. And I'm going to put links below this video to two videos that are on YouTube in which Missi describes her experience. Wanted to add, too, that I tracked Missi down after I was so shocked. I've never heard somebody describe a craft that was, virtually identical to the one that I saw in any videos I've watched. And even kind of the experience, they saw the headlights off in the distance. I got a hold of her. I tracked her down via social media. I sent her some links to my videos, and then we ended up speaking on the phone a couple of times. In the first conversation on the phone, I asked her about the blue light thing, and she said, as a matter of fact, she said I was driving home into my driveway. I think she said driving into her driveway one night, and that same kind of blue light, a beam was shining on a tree or some trees by her house. And then in the second conversation, she brought up the fact that her husband had also seen this beam of blue light shining on some power lines that are right near their house one evening. So they've also had this crazy thing with the blue light. And she's a very, very nice lady, very regular kind of person, as I think I am, and I certainly believe their story. So I'll play that portion of video for you now. As I said, you should go follow the links that I'll put below this and listen to those interviews in their entirety. I think you'd find them interesting, and they comport amazingly well in terms of the description of the craft with, as I said, with what I saw.
It's February 19th,
Yep,
2017?
it was a Sunday morning.
Okay. Tell us what happened, like with the first incident that you experienced.
Well, my husband Shaw he's always been an early bird. He's always up 3, 4 in the morning. He's always in bed 7 o'clock at night. That's just his routine. So he was up That morning, he was at the kitchen window having his coffee and a cigarette, and he noticed lights. And he came into the bedroom and he said, Missy, get up. He said, there's weird lights outside. And I had fallen back to sleep. So he came in a second time and he said, hurry up, get up. You're going to miss it. So I knew it was important to him. So I got up and I remember looking at the clock on the microwave, and it was like 4:12 in the morning. And I was like, not too pleased, because that's the only day I could sleep in on a Sunday. And I was like, really? You're going to wake me up at 4 in the morning to look at lights? Well, I looked, and out in the horizon, it looked just like headlights, bright white. It looked like headlights on a car or a truck, like those halogen, really bright. And I was like, wow, like, you're speechless. We live 2 miles from the Manchester Regional Airport, so we're used to planes and helicopters and everything else. So you get used to, you kind of know what's what. And if that looks odd, it's not right.
So you're very used to conventional aircraft, and so this
Yeah.
really
Yep.
stood out as something different.
Yes. And Shaw noticed it right away. And like I said, he came and got me, and I looked. So we decided to go outside on our porch, for a better view to see what the heck it was. Well, Shaw's standing in front of me, and I had my arms wrapped around him. I could feel his heart just pounding. So I could tell he was nervous. And I said, oh, babe, don't worry about it. I said, it's probably military or something like that. And I remember telling him, go get your phone. And he said, I can't move. Well, besides that, this part I'm still having a hard time trying to digest and just understand itself. Is the next moment I was on the other side of the porch by myself. I had my head back, and I remember my arms slightly out to my side, because I remember thinking in my head, because I remember putting my arms down to my side, thinking, why? I don't stand like that. People don't stand like that. Why is my head all the way back? Why am I putting my arms to my side? Like, that's weird. And above my head was this huge black triangle. No noise at all. No engine sound, nothing. It was like a subwoofer, like a hum,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Do you know if Shaw was still paralyzed at this point?
Not at this point. Um,
As I said, I think you would find her complete interviews interesting. There are 2 online, and I'm going to put links to those below this video. Her and I have talked. I found her. I saw the video, and then I tracked her down, and we ended up having a couple of nice conversations on the phone. And, people think everybody wants to have this happen and blah, blah, blah. I talked to her the other day, and she was telling me, I was telling her about something weird that happened to me, and recently, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And she said, well, about 2 weeks ago, she said, I wrote it down, and she said she kept a journal or something. And she said, I was out on a deck again, and she said, I saw what I thought was, I think it was a satellite, but it was too bright. I kept watching it, and she said, I'm pretty sure it was a satellite. And then she said, but it had a strobe light on it. And I'm like, Missy, satellites don't have strobe lights. What are you thinking? And but she was really resistant to going, this is a UFO. And then she said to me, I couldn't believe she said this, because, she was really trying to convince herself, I'm sure this is a satellite. Even though it's got a strobe light on it, she said, all of a sudden, she said, Guy, it just left like a bullet. It just went, psh. And I said, well, that ain't a satellite. Come on. Satellites don't do that. So, it's not like, people just want this crap to happen and want to see these things. And, she's kind of trying to deny this recent thing where whatever she saw, it wasn't no satellite. But anyway, move on here and tell you about this crazy thing that happened to me that's really it's too strange. I don't know. It's not a sighting, but it's real odd. Okay, this is totally weird, and I don't know if people will find it interesting. I don't even know how to categorize this. It was a weird synchronicity and a kind of, oh man, I don't know how to describe it. Almost like getting kind of I almost felt as if I was given some information or something, and I never was into the paranormal or ESP or anything like that. I don't know what the hell happened here. It's really strange. And I'm just going to lay this out there. I don't know if it's a wise thing to do, even amongst, for people who follow the UFO subject. I think a lot of people in the community of, UFO, the people who study this stuff would think I was nuts, and I don't know what it means. But maybe I'm making too much of it, but it was real odd. And this is what happened. About 2 years ago, my wife wanted to go into Flint, Michigan, about 20 miles east of here, and go to the Capitol Theater and see The Moth performed live. And I was like, what in the hell is The Moth? What The Moth is a program on National Public Radio. And what it is, ordinary people get up and speak for 15 or 20 minutes, and they talk about humorous, interesting, some kind of little fascinating life experiences presented in an entertaining way. And what it is just storytelling by average people. And they have these performances around the country. NPR records them. They put them on the radio, and you can hear them on the internet. And I'd never heard of this thing, but I was like, okay, we can do that. I didn't want to go because I have something called social anxiety disorder. I really didn't want to go, but trying to be a good husband, she talked me into it. I get real anxious in kind of like public situations. I can make these videos. I don't even like going to restaurants. I get real tense in large groups of people, or if I feel like I can't leave, or I don't know what it is. I've struggled with this for about 40 years. But anyway, she convinced me to go to this thing called The Moth. So 2 years ago, I go with her to Flint, Michigan, to the Capitol Theater to see The Moth. And we parked about 5 blocks away from the theater. We walked to the theater. Turns out we're early, and I'm a smoker. I left my cigarettes in the car. I see a guy smoking a cigarette, and I walk up to the guy, and I said, listen, man, I feel like a hobo, but I left my cigarettes in the car. And he said, oh, no, listen, no problem. Here's a cigarette. My name's Vic. We started talking. We talked for all of maybe, 3 minutes. He told me he was a musician. He's maybe a few years younger than me. And I told him I'd been a musician for many years until I was about 35. That's all I did for a living. And he still played around town, and we had this brief conversation. That was it. And he gave me a cigarette. It was pleasant. And then we all went in and saw The Moth. So, okay, that's 2 years ago. So fast forward to about 2 weeks ago, one of my very best friends in the world, his daughter was getting married. And my wife and I were invited to the wedding. And again, I really didn't want to go because of this social anxiety disorder, which has gotten worse over the last 5-6 years. And it was held at a really beautiful, exclusive country club south of here in Grand Blanc, Michigan. And sort of had to go. I wanted to go, but I just, I was worried because I get real anxious. So we went to this wedding about, would have been last Saturday. And we get out there. We got there late. The wedding was actually outdoors. We stood in the back, and then everything moved over to this enormous clubhouse, country club thing. And there was about a 45-minute period where we all waited for the reception to actually start. My friend whose daughter got married told me they were going to have a terrific band. And so we had to wait for like 45 minutes, and my wife and I were out on this patio. People were kind of milling around, having drinks, and there was a guy playing the piano, and it was very exclusive. And but I was really having bad anxiety. I mean, extreme. And I don't drink. The last time I drank was 6 years ago, one night. And before that, it was one night in 1998. Many years ago, decades ago, I drank too much, so I'd quit. And I just stay away from booze. And but I was having a real bad time. We're sitting on this patio. My wife could tell. I was all tensed up. I didn't feel real well. And she said, you know what? Why don't you have, like, say, a glass of wine or something? And I said, you know what? I feel like I need to. So I went and got a glass of white wine, and then I got another one, so I had two, so. And we walking around this patio, And this guy comes up to me and he says, "Don't I know you people?" He said, "I think I've met you before." And I said, "Gosh, I don't recognize you." And he said, "Did you guys go to see The Moth at the Capitol Theater a couple of years ago?" And I said, "Yeah, we did." And he said, "Remember we talked and I gave you a cigarette and you said you were a musician?" And oh my gosh, I said, "You've got an incredible memory." It came back to me that this was the guy that I'd met, Vic. And I didn't recall his name. Turned out that, as a matter of fact, he was the leader of the band that was going to play at the reception that night, which, by the way, was a spectacular band. They were terrific. And so, again, we talked kind of like the Capitol Theater for like literally 2 minutes or something. And my wife and I went over and sat down at a little table again on this patio, and we just, about 10, 15 minutes passed. We're still waiting for this damn thing to start, right? And I saw Vic walking a few feet away from me, just walking by me. And without any kind of thought process, I've tried to rewind in my mind, what I was thinking. And there was no thinking at all. I saw this guy, and something came over me. And this is crazy, all right? This is really bizarre. I don't do things like this. I didn't even tell my wife why I was getting up. And I got up and I walked over to Vic and I kind of got in his face. And I sort of, confronted him and I said, "You've had a really weird close-up UFO sighting, haven't you?" And I've never said anything like that to anybody in my life. I generally avoid bringing this up unless I know somebody really well. I would never accuse somebody I would never say that to anybody. I've never said anything. I don't even generally say to people I know, "Have you ever seen a UFO?" I don't know where the hell this came from. But I said to him, "You've had a really weird close-up UFO sighting, haven't you?" And he said, "As a matter of fact, I have." And this is going to sound crazy, but I felt like I knew that was going to be what he said. I wasn't really asking him as much if he'd had a sighting. I wanted to hear about it. And that sounds nuts. Now we're getting off into what ESP or telepathy or I don't know what. I don't know what. Like I said, I've tried to rewind and go back. What precipitated there was no thought process. I just went boom. I'm in his face and said, and he said, "As a matter of fact, yes, I have." And he went on to say immediately, he said, "Yeah, when I was about 17, I was driving down Dordt Highway, which is a big 4-lane busy road in Flint." And he said, "I saw all these cars on the side of the road, and these people were out of their cars and looking up." And he said, "I looked up, and about 200 feet in the air, there was this thing." He said it looked like a straw hat. And he said it had, at the top of it had portholes that was spinning, different colored lights coming out of them. And he said it's just sitting there 200 feet in the air above Dordt Highway. He said, "I pulled over, got out, we're all looking at it." He said, "We watched it for a minute or 2 minutes." And he said, all of a sudden, he said it left by just like a bullet. He said it just went psh. And he said, the really crazy thing was, he said, there was nothing in the newspaper the next day. He said there was nothing in the Flint Journal, which shocked him. Where have you heard that before? If you've watched my videos, so, and then he looked sort of uncomfortable, and I can understand why. I don't know why I asked him this, and he just kind of walked away, and I walked back to my wife, and I said, "You're not going to believe what I just did." And I said, I don't even know why I did it. And I told her, I said, I walked over and said to this guy, "Hey, you've had a really weird close-up UFO sighting, haven't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I have." And he told me this story. And my wife was like, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "I don't know. When I saw him, I felt like, oh, this guy, he knows all about this too. He's had this happen." And I'd had 2 glasses of wine, but obviously I wasn't drunk. I was in an altered state of consciousness. I was more relaxed than normal. And, but, I think, and I'm going out on a limb here, but I think when you have one of these close-up events, I think these synchronicities kind of start. Some other odd things have happened that I mentioned in a previous video, that right after the blue light thing, I was in a very bad state when that happened, of depression and in a bad marriage. And right after that, through a bizarre chain of events, I ran into my wife, a gal that I'd grown up with, and we got together. My life's been wonderful. And I don't pretend to know what any of this stuff means. If you know, you're a lot smarter than I am. I just know this was a really strange thing. I don't make those. I don't say those kind of inappropriate things in social situations. I don't go on and on about UFOs. I make these videos for YouTube. When friends are over, sometimes I'll say, yeah, I'll tell them about seeing a UFO, and they might say I saw one too or not. But I've never been in a public place, and I told a guy I saw a UFO that works at Home Depot one time, because I see him all the time, and he just chuckled. And I mean, but this was totally bizarre, because I felt like I knew that this guy had seen a UFO. That's it. It's odd. I just kind of wanted to share that. I've watched a lot of videos. I was going to say too, I've never heard a UFO researcher suggest that kind of a scenario. Because a lot of skeptics will say, this guy sees an alien and it looks like that guy's the alien because he's heard this before. Well, I've never heard of anybody doing what I did, and I don't know where it came from, and it was kind of a knowing that I felt I had, and that sounds crazy. It sounds nuts, but anyway, I had to rush this video. I hope it made sense. I don't know what to think about any of this stuff, as I always say. I don't know what I think. Maybe you can tell me what you think, and it's very, very, very odd, mysterious stuff that will be with me the rest of my life. I hope that before I kick the bucket, I can make one or two more videos, but this was some stuff that I felt was important to talk about, for me anyway. So with that, I'm out. God bless you. Be nice to each other. Try to keep an open mind. As I said, keep your eyes in the skies. I always say that too, because these guys are here, whatever they are. I don't pretend to know. So I'm out here. Have a good one.